major feature at the Goodwood Revival, but it's time for some cars to hit the tracks as well. We're celebrating Ecurie Ecosse's 60 years, the amazing team that was founded by David Murray up at Murchison Mews in Edinburgh and did such amazing things to win Le Mans twice, beating all the works teams in the late 1950s.
Bruce, this is one of these days when we're going to be looking at the ground and at the sky at the same time. It's not easy, but we've got fun on the ground. We've got some really exciting airplanes due to take off.
Thanks very much, Chris, and you're the man to be taking control of all of that. Your aviation knowledge is second to none, I would say.
I don't think so. I make it up as I go along.
That's fine. I believe every word. But on track at the moment, celebrating the glorious history, the 50s into the 60s in particular, for Ecurie Ecosse. Great rivalry with fellow Scottish team Border Reivers, but really you look at the record books and it was the men from Edinburgh who came out in front with their array of astonishing cars. And if you can get access to the grid if you're wearing tartan, if you're playing bagpipes you can go on twice, playing bagpipes, wearing a kilt, you can stay on all day. I think that's how it works.
I've got tears in my eyes because I raced that lovely blue Coupe of Bristol a couple of times.
And one of the most coveted race transporters in the world. For some reason, it's just so incredibly famous. I think it was Corky or Dinky made a model, which I always coveted but never had.
And Bruce, Dario Franchitti is driving it after his training session yesterday. He's at the wheel of the transporter.
No difference at all. 250 GTO into a transporter. Can't see the difference.
I'm sure he's capable of handling both.
One does feel so, but the evocative Ecurie Ecosse livery, the bands on the nose to help the teams identify which of their cars was coming through the night at the Le Mans 24 Hours, but just what a record David Murray's team achieved. And you think of the list of drivers that went through the Ecurie Ecosse books, and it goes on and on, fated all. But for the Stewart family in particular, Jackie, her brother Jimmy, it was a very, very special team.
The stripes on the front, Lance Corporal, Corporal and Sergeant, that's how they referred to the cars.
And I think Jackie Stewart might be driving the 57 Le Mans winner today. So it looked like his helmet out of the number 3 car.
That's Jackie in RSF 301.
So you've got the first, second and third place cars from the 1957 Le Mans. That's the French entered car, which I think they've added just to complete the podium, because that race wasn't just Ecurie Ecosse's finest moment, it was probably the Jaguar D-Type's finest moment as well.
But for a team to win Le Mans once against the works team is quite one thing, an enormous achievement. But Ecurie Ecosse did it 2 years running, 56 and 57. You can imagine how the partying went on all through the following week.
There's the Coupe of Bristol, now owned by Barry Wood.
And Chris, did you not test that car here many moons ago?
I did in 1981, yes. The circuit wasn't as beautiful as it is now, but it was great fun bobbing around here in the Cooper.
What was the chicane made of at that point? Was there a chicane at that point?
The chicane was bricks.
Well, it was still bricks?
Yeah, I think so. You had to be very careful. I don't think polystyrene had been invented then. But of course now it's filled with water, so people are much more careful about the chicane than they used to be.
I don't want to tempt fate, but we've certainly seen fewer incidents at the chicane so far than in previous years, and I think you're right. I think that's why the mental barrier is greater, isn't it?
Well, with the Sal tyres blowing high above the pit lane and the stunning assembly of cars lining up beneath, the skirling noise of the bagpipes, the tempo is really, really picking up. And what a tribute to Ecurie Ecosse.
That transporter has the most complex engine of flat 6, Dario enjoying all that power. Two-stroke diesel, has 6 pistons, 2 crankshafts, cross-connecting rods, and a blower, and produces an extraordinary noise and not a huge amount of power.
But it's such a beautiful machine. Do you know how much we think that's worth? Shall I tell you?
Well, it was auctioned a couple of years ago, wasn't it?
£2 million.
Gee whiz.
Take two.
Yes.
So how much would that be if it was loaded up with a couple of D-types as well then?
Well, you hope they're not looking when you're leaving the factory, but you can have a party on the roof. What's wrong with that?
Good to see Dick Skipworth back in one of the D-types. He really assembled a collection of Ecurie Ecosse cars, and this truck, of course.
I'll do the film. Well, no, I went.
So the last two vehicles in this display coming round to form up on the grid. The party seems to be going very happily for those sticking up between the ramps on the back of the Ecurie Ecosse Transporter. The original Transporter, the Bedford K-Series van, bringing up the rear, but the real glory of the cars down there formed up on the grid in that Ecurie Ecosse blue.
I was really hoping Dario would take the chicane then, but he's very sensibly just driven straight on anyway. So just to follow up on that 57 race that we're celebrating today, obviously by 1957 Jaguar had withdrawn the works team, factory team from sports car competition, but still supplied teams like Ecurie Ecosse with up-to-date kit, and Ecurie Ecosse had a 3.8 litre D-type and 3.4 for the 57 race, had finished first and second, but other D-types finished third, fourth and sixth, so quite a remarkable result, all run by privateers against the works Ferraris, Maseratis and Aston Martin. So one of the great results for any car at the 24 hours.
Dario looks as exhausted as at the end of an Indy 500 after driving the one lap of the Transporter. I don't know if we can pan down to the little tiny Ecosse Imp, the little single-seater racing car, which is to the left of the, well, to the right of the Transporter as we look from the back of the grid. That was built by the Ecurie to race at Ingliston, where their current cars were too wide. Ingliston was a pretty narrow track. So Vernon Williamson, in his kilt, has got the little Ecurie Ecosse Imp at the back.
It looks absolutely tiny, doesn't it?
It does.
Well done for spotting it.
You could just see the back of it to the right of the Transporter. It was never very successful. Suspension was a bit too bouncy, apparently. But it's great that it survived. There's Vernon in his kilt. I'm not sure what tartan. Is there a Williamson tartan?
I'm sure there would be. But what we're going to see, of course, these cars will parade around the circuit again after this celebration on the grid, but you can see them in the paddock, and do come and look at the cars in the paddock. They're very near the Freddie March Spirit of Aviation area, so look out for them all lined up in their little booths.
I can hear the roar of Merlin engines. That's exciting for me. Makes my little heart go pitter-patter. So we are scheduled to get our air display. It's due at 1 o'clock.
The first one's taken off.
4 amazing airplanes chasing each other around the sky in an oval pattern over Goodwood. We'll pick them up on the big screens pretty soon, but at the moment just enjoy the sound of those Merlin and Allison engines. There's the Curtis P40 taking off. That's actually got a Merlin engine.
So, all the Ecurie Ecosse cars forming up on the grid. Let's go down and join Henry Hope Frost.
Welcome to the grid for a very, very special moment, a typical Goodwood Revival moment. We're celebrating the 60th anniversary of Ecurie Ecosse's second Le Mans win in 1957 with the legendary Jaguar D-Type. We are delighted here at Goodwood this weekend to welcome a man who built Jaguar D-Types on the production line in period and was then seconded to the race teams and spanned all 3 of the Le Mans winning D-Types for the factory in 1955 and for Ecurie Ecosse in 1956 and 1957. Australian Ron Gordian is with us. Let me have a quick word with Ron. Absolutely thrilled to have you here, let me tell you, on behalf of everybody.
It's absolutely fabulous to be back here after 60 years. I was here at Goodwood in 1957, and now 60 years later, fantastic. Very emotional.
It's a bit smarter now than it was, isn't it?
All we had was a paddock and a beer tent. That's all we had.
I'd love to have seen your face when you walked in on Wednesday or whenever it was.
Yes. The emotion internally is fantastic. And this morning, seeing the Spitfire too was fantastic.
So you came over from Australia, how old were you? Late teens, early 20s?
No, 24 when I came to Jaguar, and 28 when I went back home.
You knocked on the door at Jaguar and said, give me a job, essentially?
More or less, that's right. The first, yes, I approached them, all the motor industry at that time, no work was available. So I approached Norton, BSA and Triumph, no work. So I went to the Government Employment Service in Coventry, and the guy behind the counter said, can I help you? And I said, I'm looking for a job in the motor industry. So he peeled off all the jobs available, and I said, well, I'll go for the toolmaker's job, please. So he wrote out a bit of a form and said, you take that back. I said, what company? He said, Jaguar. I said, I was there yesterday and there's no employment. He said, just take that. So I knocked on the door again, and the personnel manager recognised me from the day before, and he said, look, I'm sorry, I told you there was no work. So I handed over the little bit of paper. He went red in the face, pushed his chair back and apologised profusely. He said, look, late Friday afternoon, a memo come across my desk saying about starting a new project. That's all I know about it. Go up the hall, second door on the left, and see Tyrrell Smith. He's the engineer employing staff. You just happened to be the first one. So I knocked on the door, went in, and Tyrrell Smith said, well, look, I don't know much about it, but I know we're going to build 100 special sports cars. You know, so he said, right, can you start tomorrow morning? I said, yes. So he said, be here at 8 o'clock with your toolbox and your overalls, and I'll introduce you to Phil Weaver, the superintendent. And he was running the competition department and the experimental department. That's where we started building the first 10 D-types.
And they're here, these actual cars that you put together.
Yes, well, I helped to build the first 10, and all 5 cars are here today, yes.
And then you were seconded to the race team, and you were on the Hawthorn Bueb car that won in 55.
Correct, yes, that's right. Well, they were one mechanic short. They had 3 cars entered, and they needed 2 mechanics per car. So Phil Weaver said, would you like to come to Le Mans, make up number 6? I said, yes, sir, I sure would. So that's what happened. And then, of course, later in the year, Ecurie Ecosse were buying 3 cars, and they only had 1 mechanic. So I was told that they were looking for a second mechanic. So I approached them, and they put me on. So I moved from Jaguar to Ecurie Ecosse for the 56-57.
I wish I could talk to you for weeks, but sadly we're going to run out of time. What a very special time in your life, and wonderful that Goodwood has recreated this in a small way.
It's absolutely fantastic, and I hope it continues to progress too. It's lovely.
And is it true that those are your period overalls that still fit?
A little bit on the tight side, but the overalls are 58. This was 55, and that was 56, 57. Yes.
I'm speechless. Thank you for coming. It's a real pleasure.
You're most welcome.
Ron Gordian, thank you so much. Let me turn around and have a quick word with one of the most famous names and faces in motorsport, of course, who started his career with Ecurie Ecosse. So, Jackie, if I could rudely interrupt, lovely to see you at Goodwood once again.
Wonderful to be here. It's such a terrific event. Lord March just does the best job. I think there's over 60,000 people here today. Glorious weather and glorious Goodwood.
And the weather is a little kinder today than yesterday.
Yes, I had a wee run yesterday in the wet, which was different. But great crowd, great collection, the best collection of cars in the world, of any kind. I mean, it's the most amazing event.
2 questions in one. What did Ecurie Ecosse mean to Jackie Stewart, and what did Ecurie Ecosse mean to Scotland?
Oh, first of all, to Scotland, it put Scotland on the map of motorsport. David Murray and Wilkie Wilkinson created Ecurie Ecosse in a way I don't think any other team was ever put together, and had great drivers. Ian Stewart, Sir James Scott Douglas, Bill Dobson were the beginnings, and then my brother drove for them as well. Desmond Titterington drove for all great drivers, and really went round the world waving the flag for Scotland. Scottish Racing Blue was Ecurie Ecosse Blue, and I was picked up by David Murray to drive originally the Togero, at the very early stages of my career, I think in 1963, and then the Ford engine one which I drove yesterday. David Murray was an amazing man, from a private entrant to get work support like he did, and ended up by winning Le Mans twice as a private entry. I mean, quite remarkable.
And isn't it staggering that Ron Gordian, who built and ran the cars in period, is here?
Yes, that's just great. I mean, he's the last remaining mechanic, I think. Stan Sprott died last year, who was a great mechanic, and looked after me as well as my brother. And the Coupe of Bristol that's back here on the grid right now, my brother drove in the British Grand Prix in 1953 and was lying in 5th position with only 5 laps to go, and ran into Cop's corner badly, and that was the end of that.
Finally, I sense a real feeling of patriotism and national pride here today.
Yes, I mean, the pipes and drums are here. Lord March lays it on in such a beautiful way. You get the finest cars in the world, some of the greatest drivers. Dario Franchitti here and David Coulthard, all from Scotland. Quite a few Scottish drivers here, just celebrating the fact of Ecurie Ecosse.
Lovely to see you, Sir Jackie. Many thanks for coming once again.
Lovely to be back at Goodwood.
Thank you, Sir Jackie. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our event host, Lord March.
Ladies and gentlemen, 60 years ago, Team Scotland won what, for many motor enthusiasts worldwide, had become the most important road race in the annual motorsporting calendar, the Le Mans 24 Hours. Team Scotland was, of course, the Ecurie Ecosse racing team, so famously based in a tiny garage in Merchiston Mews, Edinburgh. And its great win at Le Mans in 1957 was not alone, because the team, with its Jaguar D-Type cars, had won the same race just the previous year, in 1956, upon its very first appearance there. So the 1957 victory made it 2 in a row for a team that primarily English doubters had originally dismissed as the Haggis Bashers. Now, there is still more to admire and to celebrate about the Edinburgh team's double Le Mans success, because that second win, 60 years ago this year, was not just another win for the flag metallic blue liveried Jaguar D-Types. Oh no. Having put a single car across the finishing line first in 56, in 57 it was a 1-2 triumph, because the Ecurie Ecosse team cars finished not only first, but second too. In 1956, the winning Ecurie Ecosse driver pairing had been Ron Flockhart and Ninian Sanderson, both good Scots. And in 57, Ron Flockhart won Le Mans for the second consecutive year in the Ecurie Ecosse Jaguar D-Type, but he was partnered this time by Cheltenham-based English driver Ivor Bueb, Ivor the driver, big, burly, and remembered by all who knew him as such good fun. He was the man who had previously partnered Mike Hawthorne in the winning Works Jaguar D-Type at Le Mans in 55. And so Le Mans 57 was not only the Ecurie Ecosse Jaguars' second consecutive win in the 24-hour classic, it was also Jaguar's third in a row, an historic hat-trick for the great Coventry mark. Indeed, quite remarkably, D-Types finished first, second, third, fourth and sixth that year, 60 years ago, a feat we acknowledge today by including the non-Ecurie Ecosse cars alongside their Satar Blue brethren. So right now, we commemorate and celebrate Ecurie Ecosse, the racing organisation founded by Edinburgh accountant and wine importer David Murray and friends in 1951, and which, through that decade, came to epitomise the very best gifted Corinthian amateur sportsmanship, honed and fine-tuned to the best and most professional standards. The Scottish team often graced Goodwood with its presence, racing C-Type and D-Type Jaguars here at many of our major meetings, from Easter Monday to the Goodwood 9-hour race and, of course, the TT. And to have achieved so much in such a competitive category and with such world-beating combination of speed, endurance and reliability, Ecurie Ecosse plainly embodied a truly gifted group of racing mechanics. They worked under the direction and management of the legendary Wilkie Wilkinson and Stan Sprout. Sandy Arthur and Ron Gaudian and all their colleagues did a simply stupendous job for their drivers, for their team, and for their country. A measure of their work is the manner in which immediately after Le Mans in '57, the Team D-types were driven on the road to Monza in Italy, where the following weekend saw them contest the race of two worlds' Monzapolis race, over 500 miles on the high-speed bank track, against the visiting Indianapolis cars from America. Ecurie Ecosse drivers Jack Furman and Jock Lawrence in their D-type Jaguars promptly finished 4th and 5th against those lighter, much more powerful single-seater cars. I'm delighted to tell you that one of those fine Ecurie Ecosse mechanics is with us here today, Ron Gaudian, who has made the long trip specially from his home in New Zealand. Ron, it's great to have you with us, and thank you very much for coming. Very successful. By the end of 1961, David Murray could report that the team had run at 125 meetings, at which it had taken 68 first places, 43 seconds, and 39 thirds. A noble record indeed. Ecurie Ecosse went on in later years to campaign Lister, Tajiro, Cooper, and other makes of cars over very many years. It provided the launch pad which projected Sir Jackie Stewart onto the world stage, and it survives today under the stewardship of Scots enthusiast Hugh McCaig. But right now, please look at the big screens as my sister Nimi takes us back to the 1950s, in particular to Le Mans 1957, and tells us the story of Team Scotland, that great, unforgettable motor racing force, Ecurie Ecosse.
A great tribute from Lord March to this wonderful team. We don't have... Okay, let's have a closer look at the cars. First of all, the long-nose D-type. The second evocation of the D-type, that's number 3, in this perfect Ecurie Ecosse blue. Alongside it, another long-nose D-type, driven in to win the race in '57.
They are the first and second place cars, those two there, the sister cars.
They could achieve getting on for 190 miles an hour along the Mulsanne. There's the short-nose D-type, with didn't have the fared-in fin at the back. It had the fin, but not fared-in, and alongside him, the third of the Works long-nose cars. So, 4 fabulous D-type. So we're going round number 6, the long-nose D-type. These cars will be, handbag in the passenger seat. These cars will be parading around the circuit. And we're following back towards the C-types behind. Great crowd of kilted Scots enjoying this gloriously sunny moment. We're so lucky that we don't have yesterday's weather.
Maybe not just Scots, anyone wearing tartan allowed to be admitted to the grid to get a look at these cars, but they never look better than in this weather, Chris.
Yeah, they do, Bruce. There's the early short-nose D-type. Alongside it, its predecessor, the fabulous C-type Jaguar. Both cars designed by Malcolm Sayer. Sterling actually said he preferred to drive the C-type than the D-type. Another short-nose D-type. One interesting fact about the fin at the back, we think it's fore and aft exactly, but it's not. Malcolm Sayer angled it 3 degrees to the right to compensate for the added drag of the driver that side and make sure it drove straight. Not many people know that.
I wonder how accurate he was with his estimations, because obviously he was trying to cancel something out.
Well, I've never heard there have been reports or drivers saying that it was unstable, so I think that he must have been pretty close with his calculations.
He was. Actually, I was wrong. He angled it to the left. Of course, the drag on the right-hand side made it want to turn right. There's the first of the Ecurie Ecosse cars, the fabulous XK120. This, I think, was found almost derelict in London, and somebody recognized what the car was and rescued it, fortunately. C-Type was developed by Malcolm Sayre purely to win Le Mans. And William Lyons was really only interested in the publicity that the company got from Le Mans. And the C-Type was a very simple design. There's the Coupe of Bristol. Jackie's talked about his brother Jimmy driving the Coupe of Bristol. I raced it a couple of times in 1981. It's a lovely car to drive. Beautiful, sweet handling, Bristol engine, plenty of torque. The only slightly disconcerting thing was the gear lever between your legs. Okay, we move on past another D-Type, C-Type's behind. C-Type's such an elegant shape. Simple, solid axle rear suspension. Really, William Lyons said to Malcolm Sayre, make it an efficient body, make it reminiscent of our current cars, which are the 120. So a lot of similarities. Kevin, on the right. No, we'll look at the Lister Jaguar first, on the left.
Well, that's, of course, the car that gave Archie Scott Brown the works Lister such trouble in the hands of Master Gregory in 1958. So that showed, really, again, Ecosse's ability to take on the works teams with their own kit straight away.
And they were very brave because they took on the Indianapolis cars at Monza. There's the Monzanapolis Lister Jaguar. The first Monza race between the Brits and the Italians, the D-Types, really, they shot off because they had 4 gears. The Indy cars only had 2 gears, so the D-Types accelerated way ahead, but then very quickly the Indy cars overtook them. Cooper. After the D-Types, Ecurie Ecosse, Tajira Jaguar on the right, and Jackie talked about that. I think was his first car that he raced for the Ecosse. Cooper Monaco on the left, number 16 Tajiro Jaguar, designed by John Tajiro, who designed the AC Ace chassis that became the Cobra chassis, so a great designer.
And we've already seen this car in action today, haven't we, in qualifying, which Cottingham had going very quickly, so we'll see that again. Several of these cars will be in action in one race or another. And they're the two Tajeras. I think one has a Buick and one a Ford engine. And I think that's what Jackie was driving yesterday.
Yeah, Jackie drove the Ford car yesterday. So here we are with the world-famous Ecurie Transporter. It looks fantastic on the grid, but let's take a little video to show us a little more about it.
Back in the 1950s, David Murray was a Scottish motor racing enthusiast. He was a chartered accountant and wine importer living in Edinburgh, and for 1951 he had the idea to form a national racing team to represent Scotland. Sports car racing was more affordable than the Grand Prix class. As a good Scot, such economy attracted Murray, who with friends and private backers began campaigning Jaguar XK120s and later C-Types with considerable success. He proposed pooling their start and prize money, from which the cars would be maintained and tuned by mechanics led by Wilkie Wilkinson. Wilkie had previously prepared Murray's MG and Ferrari cars. A team title had to be chosen. In conversation with Gregor Grant, Scottish founder of Autosport magazine, David Murray came up with Ecurie Ecosse, French for Team Scotland. Ian Stewart's XK120 was already finished in flag metallic blue, a colour they chose for their new team livery. Based in Murray's small garage in Merchiston Mews, Edinburgh, Ecurie Ecosse made its racing debut at Chatterhall, Scotland, early in 1951, and just 1 week later made its English racing debut at Castle Combe in Wiltshire. Sir James Scott Douglas won his class in the British Empire Trophy race on the Isle of Man, and Ian Stewart scored Ecurie Ecosse's first big win a month later at St Helier, Jersey. For 1952, Murray replaced the XK120s with Jaguar C-types. Through 1953 and 54, Ecurie Ecosse was entrusted by the Jaguar factory with its X-Works Team C-types, and for 1955, they campaigned the sleek new D-types. In its first attempt upon the Le Mans 24-hour race in 1956, Ecurie Ecosse stepped forward after 2 of Jaguar's works cars were crashed on lap 3 and the third was delayed by fuel injection trouble. Into the night, the Ecosse D-type of Ron Flockhart and Ninian Sanderson led the great race. And they won, earning over £3,000, wonderful money for 1956. Autosport celebrated with a Scots blue front cover. Jaguar withdrew its works team from racing for 1957. Its X-Works D-types were entrusted to Ecurie Ecosse to contest that year's Sports Car World Championship Series. For Le Mans, David Murray entered 2 Jaguar D-types, for Ron Flockhart with Ivor Bueb and Ninian Sanderson with Jock Lawrence. From the start at Le Mans 57, Ferrari fought Maserati for the early lead. The Ecosse Jaguars played it cool, holding back, lapping consistently. Peter Collins's leading Ferrari retired. Jock Lawrence brought in his Ecosse D-type with plug trouble. Ivor Bueb lay 5th, but after 6 hours, Ferrari and Maserati were both in trouble, and Ecosse led with Flockhart Bueb, while Sanderson Lawrence lay 6th. The leading car ran trouble-free. Its sister blew some headlamp bulbs. Scottish reels and strathspeys began to be played over the circuit PA system. Into mid-morning on Sunday, and only 25 of the 54 starters were still running. The 2 Ecosse D-types lay 1st and 2nd. With 15 minutes to run, both cars made a final pit stop. Ron Flockhart told David Murray, "It's fantastic, David. We've got time for a cup of tea." And Ron Flockhart led the Ecurie Ecosse Jaguar D-type 1-2 finish, with Ninian Sanderson trailing him to the checkered flag in staged formation. Those back-to-back Le Mans 24-hour race wins in 1956 and 57 ensured Team Scotland's honoured place in motor racing history. In later years, the team would race on, with Lister Jaguars, Cooper Climax cars and Tajeros powered by Jaguar, Buick and Ford engines, leading ultimately to their own Ecosse designs. Sustained throughout by Ecurie Ecosse Association supporters, the team would foster the early career of young Jackie Stewart, and in a later revival, Ecosse Group C cars shone in the 1980s. But here we pay tribute to their finest era, 60 years ago, as back-to-back Le Mans winners with Jaguar in 1956 and 57. From a racing league of gentlemen to the finest quasi-works team in the endurance racing world, Ecurie Ecosse epitomised Scotland the brave.
Well, out on track then, the Ecurie Ecosse parade comes round. What a glowing tribute that was, absolutely impeccably produced as ever. And there is Jackie Stewart, 3-time world champion, driving again for the team which he came to Goodwood with back in the day. Came down here, he won some races, didn't he? Saw his brother compete here as well at Goodwood. Goodwood has a very special place in Jackie's heart. It's where he first drove that little Formula 3 Cooper, which really launched his single-seater career. There's the Tajero Coupe. Just glorious. Kev, the D-types, whenever you see them, you can never tire of seeing a Jaguar D-type, can you?
Absolutely, no, the D-type's one of those, one of the sort of top 10 great sports cars of all time, isn't it?
Just amazing. And then that flag blue colour scheme is brilliant. There's the Coupe of Bristol that Chris was talking about, and he was saying. Rod Jolly there with the Monza Naples car, the single-seater lister brought to Monza for the Race of Two Worlds. Simon Ham in the special Ecosse bodied lister that his late father raced very extensively over many, many years. David Ham sadly missed. C-type Jag. It's a wonderful era for them. The 50s was just a sensational era for Jaguar, wasn't it? Le Mans, C-types, D-types, 5 wins between them.
I was just going to say the C-type probably doesn't get the credit that it deserves because the D-type's a bit more glamorous and sort of looked a bit cooler, but I think the C-type was a great sports car in its own right, and really should have won a hat-trick at Le Mans itself had Jaguar not made a disastrous decision just a few weeks before the 52 event to put new streamlined bodywork on it, which meant that they all overheated because they probably had the pace with the normal car to beat Mercedes anyway, but they thought that they wouldn't have. So never make a late change before a 24-hour race.
Dario Franchitti driving the Ecurie Ecosse Transport. He's only ever driven the model before, not the real one. Indy 500 winner. Dario Franchitti, IndyCar legend, and he cut his early teeth in single seats. He raced with Jackie's team, didn't he? And was a wonderful ambassador for Scottish motorsport, just as Jackie has been for the last 50-odd years.
Well, it's great to see Darry. He always throws himself into these events really fully, doesn't he? If an opportunity comes up to drive anything, he'll jump in and do it. Sadly, he can't race, he's advised not to race, but he does pretty much everything else that comes along.
He said yesterday that he was hoping to get to drive the Transporter that I mean, did brilliantly as a model. I mean, I think it made a fortune for I can't remember if it was Corgi or Dinky made it, but I think every serious collector had one at some point or another. That's in the Matchbox BP Energol Transporter, from which Lotus 25s were disgorged. Super to see. Little Coupe of Monaco in the middle of all that. There's Dario. He's getting quite a lick. At least he's got the lines right, hasn't he? He knows his racing lines. You don't want to lurch through St Mary's on the wrong line. Bruce coming past you. Franchitti D at the wheel of the Ecurie Ecosse Transporter. It's the quickest it's been round the circuit adventure.
Such smooth lines, exactly. You can't rule out the class of the driver, but for the people on top, it's just a wonderful way to see the circuit. And very few people get to see the circuit from as high up. Let's face it, most vehicles going around the circuit are down, hunkering low, but high up in the wind. But most importantly today, in the sunshine. Yesterday was a little bit wet, but we still had fun. But today, everyone's just a little lighter on their feet, I think we can say.
That is absolutely fantastic to see. Now the Jaguar pace car has stopped down here at the pit entrance and is waving the Ecosse tribute cars off. The two coupes at the end, they didn't really enhance the Ecosse reputation. There's the Ecosse Imp as well. There's a couple of them here, one on static display down in the paddock. And everyone, wave your programs at Dario, ladies and gentlemen. Franchitti sitting up high and proud in the truck. It's a 6-cylinder 2-stroke horizontally opposed engine. It's kind of the state of the art for race transporters in those days. Isn't it wonderful that it's been so nicely preserved? Restoring trucks is a staggeringly expensive business. Think about what it costs to put a car together, restore a car. And you heard the gentleman from Porsche Classic earlier on. very wise decision to come straight through the chicane, I suspect. But yes, the sheer square footage of metalwork in those trucks makes them a different league in terms of cost to put together.